What Dr. Rothman's work demonstrates is exactly what Spotnitz had in mind. Her research, guided by Phyllis Meadow, started out with clinical observations that aroused her intense curiosity and sparked her need to know more. She brought all her clinical skills and theoretical knowledge to the research process: how to listen, how and what to observe, how to use her countertransference, how to follow a line of investigation that would create understanding and provide meaning. Her observations became, with the passage of time, more and more specific, more and more clearly defined, more elaborate in their richness of detail, until finally a clear picture emerged that took a specific shape, the picture of patients who use their bodies to do the talking. This in itself is admirable. But what is more admirable still is to find out that each patient she has presented has remained in treatment for a remarkably long time. May for over 15 years, Jim for more than 20, and Liz more than 18. The inevitable question that comes up is, what kind of psychoanalytic work has Roy Rothman been doing with these patients on the primitive edge? Dr. Rothman stated at the beginning of her paper that thanks to modern psychoanalytic treatment techniques developed by Hyman Spotnitz as her foundation, she has developed as an analyst over many years and has treated a wide variety of patients. The somatic patients she has talked about present the greatest challenge, because although they are capable of functioning to a greater or lesser degree in the outside world, their psychic lives appear inaccessible, if not inexistent. This is not Freud's stone wall of narcissism and psychosis, but as in psychosomatosis, with its origins in earliest trauma or deficit before the establishment of object or even part object mental representations. It's as if the psychic development of these patients was stunted from the first, and the energies deflected to an entirely different mode of functioning. Negative tension states are expressed through bodily symptoms, barred from discharge through adaptive pathways. The psyche gets short-circuited at the very beginning of life. In Spotnitz's formulation of the narcissistic defense in schizophrenia, the destructive instinct is turned against mental function, and the life instinct is put in the service of protecting the self-object from the vast reservoir of bottled-up rage. When the schizophrenic defense breaks down, the unbound, primitive rage erupts, and we hear in the news that an individual released from a mental institution as being safe pushed someone under the subway train. In the psychosomatic defense, we see the destructive drives discharge into and against the body. The role of the libidinal drive, as in schizophrenia, is also in the service of self-object protection. What strikes me most powerfully are the enormous amounts of violence, volcanic rage, and malignant toxicity encapsulated in these patients' bodies with no available escape mechanism. I believe that when the somatic defense breaks down, a condition similar to marasmus or failure to thrive sets in, resulting ultimately in death. Dr. Rothman has developed a clinical profile for psychosomatic patients that resonates with the work of the researchers of the Paris School of Psychosomatics, today's leading theoreticians in this field. Her findings corroborate theirs, although at the time she prepared her research, she was not acquainted with their work. We are somewhat familiar with their orientation for reading Joyce McDougall. Although McDougall is not a member of that group, she shares many of their views and has both influenced and been influenced by their work. The founder of the Paris School is the physician and psychoanalyst Pierre Marty, who started working in this area in the early 1950s in collaboration with Michel Fain and Michel de Musin. It is interesting here to draw a parallel between the research Hyman Spotnitz started doing with schizophrenic patients a decade before, in the early 1940s. His ultimate goal was to find a cure for schizophrenia using the psychoanalytic method. In the same way as he developed a psychodynamic theory of the narcissistic defense in schizophrenia, Marty and Fain worked out a unified, homogeneous psychodynamic theory for psychosomatic patients. It is also interesting to note that both the modern and the Paris schools have turned to Freud's economic and dual drive theories to understand and conceptualize the severe narcissistic disorders they study. Following Marty and Fain, many other serious and dedicated researchers affiliated with the Paris School of Psychosomatics are making valuable contributions. Most prominent among them are Claude Smagna, Marilia Eisenstein, and Elsa Rappaport de Eisenberg, among others. There is one more powerful link between their group and the moderns, Andre Green. Just as Rory Rothman found his conceptualizations enormously useful in understanding her patients and in formulating aspects of her research methodology, so too has the Paris group turned to his work in developing insights specific to psychosomatic patients. The one notable difference between the Paris School of Psychosomatics and modern analysis is that while the Paris group have greatly advanced the theoretical concepts, their clinical approach appears to rely on a modified classical method that includes interpretation and could be described as psychoanalytically based psychotherapy. In other words, the Paris psychosomaticians do not appear to have developed techniques specifically designed to treat psychosomatic patients. This brings me back to Dr. Rothman's work and her success with her patients. And I say success advisedly, for success with patients such as these has to be measured by very different standards. The work is slow, difficult, and at times even dangerous for the analyst, as we have heard. In the case of May, Rothman writes, "At this point, I'm beginning to notice a glimmer of feeling present in the room, and I note a faint lessening in the boundaryless, toxic invasiveness in my presence. I assume this is due to her ongoing discharge and release of tension states within the unique treatment setting." In the case of Jim, who needs to be in relatively close proximity, physical proximity to his analyst, I would venture to say that he is in the phase of a primitive analytic transference, according to Spodnitz's idea that the analytic transference is a new maturational experience created in the thirdness of the patient-analyst relationship. As for Liz, so totally dominated by the destructiveness of the death instinct, I would say that she is indeed being helped to stay alive by her analyst. The notion that the analyst's primary concern is to be therapeutic to the patient as a maturational agent is at the heart of the modern analytic philosophy. When Spodnitz discovered that the problem in schizophrenia was built-up aggression, he developed techniques to help the patient discharge the aggression in a socially acceptable manner. In the earliest days of his work, people got the mistaken impression that modern analysts worked to provoke rage in their patients. If this was ever the case, it ceased to be so very rapidly. Nonetheless, the idea persisted that it was important to help narcissistic patients discharge rage in order to help them improve. Spodnitz cautioned that indiscriminate discharge or abreaction did not lead to cure. What leads to cure is to say everything, both negative and positive. The modern analyst provides the necessary atmosphere, the right emotional climate, and the right emotional communications to help the patient say everything, especially when it relates to transference, namely, what is going on in the relationship between patient and analyst. As the patient progressively says everything, he develops the capacity to have access to all his feelings and his thoughts, and to achieve what the psychosomaticians and Andre Green aspire to. He develops the capacity to mentalize, to make links, to be introspective, and to have access to fantasy and the ability to fantasize. Many modern analysts have treated psychosomatic patients and continue to do so. Two of them stand out because they made a special point of working with cancer patients: Selwyn Brody and Jane Goldberg. Brody, who believed discharge of rage was curative, reported mixed success. Not all cancer patients he treated wanted to be angry, feel angry, or express anger. They declined treatment. Goldberg found a different way to work successfully with cancer patients by fostering the development of a narcissistic transference in which they could achieve an experience of oneness with her. And I quote, It should feel to the patient like a warm bath. She found that helping her patients to experience all their thoughts and feelings was curative. To return to my question earlier in this paper, what kind of work has Rory Rothman done with her psychosomatic patients? It can best be described by presenting Spotnitz's blueprint for treatment, which she faithfully adhered to, contained in his 1957 paper, The Borderline Schizophrenic. Although the paper is called The Borderline Schizophrenic, by now we all know that modern psychoanalysis was found suitable to treat every kind of psychopathology. So here we read, therapeutic factors. The primary emphasis is on meeting two basic needs. One, the need for adequate psychological nourishment in the form of emotional communication or attitude. I want you to pay attention to the word attitude because I will continue talking about it. Adequate psychological release for the high accumulations of destructive or liminal energy in the mental apparatus of the borderline schizophrenic. Read accumulations in the soma of the psychosomatic patient, and you'll understand Rory Rothman's work. Adequate nourishment and adequate release are specified because too much or too little of either one is not therapeutic for this type of patient, or any kind of patient for that matter, I would add. Rothman brought to the treatment of her patients what Spotnitz is writing about. She provided adequate nourishment and facilitated adequate release. In terms of attitude, her capacity to tolerate, sustain, and control the most difficult induced countertransference states constituted in itself a powerful emotional communication to the patient. Her attitude was totally therapeutic. This explains the longevity of her cases. This is how she was able to keep them in treatment. The term attitude also reappears in 1969 in the following statement taken from Modern Psychoanalysis of the Schizophrenic Patient. And Spotnitz wrote, I strive through words and attitudes to advance the science and art of helping each person produce in his own physico-chemical organization, the body's own laboratory, whatever rearrangement of his physiological and psychological functioning would permit him to feel, think, and accomplish what he wants in life.